Welcome back. We have seen schools move quickly to make distance learning work, distributing food and computers, even driving through students' neighborhoods to lift up spirits. But how long will this last? Has COVID-19 changed the future of schooling as we know it? The president of California School Board Association, Xilonin Cruz-Gonzalez, joins us this morning to answer some questions. Good morning to you. Thank you so much for being here with us. Let's start with some of the biggest challenges you guys have seen and what's being done to fix them.
Yeah, so I think the first thing was, really school stopped almost overnight, and we had to figure out how to switch over to educating students in their own houses. And I think districts took a bit of time planning that out, thinking that what it would look like, and have now been rolling it out. And obviously, multitude of challenges, especially some of the kids aren't checking in, trying to educate kids over far distances, especially as you think about the younger kids and the attention span that they have. And most importantly, I would say the social emotional aspects and that lack of personal connection, in-person connection that you get being in school.
You're right. My daughter is 3.5 years old, and it's really difficult to keep her still. It's also difficult for parents right now because they're at home, they're educating their kids, and then you've got the teachers who also have their kids, some of them as well. How are you dealing with that as far as helping parents as well as teachers who need extra help?
Yeah, and from what I hear, teachers are actually going above and beyond, and some of them are putting in crazy 12-hour days just trying to just make this quick switch to online learning. And then obviously, of course, parents are struggling because now they're the ones sort of leading and guiding instruction in the house. I think that we've all been throwing it together, and I'm hoping that as summer comes along, we can take a quick break to look back and reflect on what's happened and what we can improve in case something like this happens again in the future.
The governor did talk about possibly opening up the schools as early as late July. Are you guys getting things ready for it?
Well, it's interesting. You have some districts in San Diego County that already opened up in July, so that may not be a shock for those districts. But I think the governor yesterday clarified that he does not mean for schools to start early and that schools will open at their regular times. He was, I think, just thinking about what possibilities were out there. So I think it's a safe bet to look at whatever start date was already scheduled and think that's what your date is going to be.
Okay. That clarifies it. And the governor also talked about learning loss during this time. How has this closure and the distance learning impacted what you think may be long-term education?
Yeah, I mean, we already are seeing learning loss, and I think if you look at other places where they've had disruption in education, there are definite long-term effects. I think the important thing for us as a state is to really sort of take a step back again and think about what does that loss look like? How can we plan to overcome it? How can we give kids additional opportunities to accelerate their learning so that it doesn't have an impact for them into their futures?
What's being done to support students' mental and physical health during this time?
Yeah, and that's really critical. I mean, I think the physical piece, obviously, I think we're depending a lot on our parents to make sure their kids are staying active, although I know schools are incorporating physical education in the education kids are getting. But especially with the mental health piece, I think our counselors are going above and beyond trying to reach, making sure that they're connecting with students and families. But again, it's all very difficult, right, because none of it's in person. And so really it's around how are we ensuring that we have those connections and communication so that when issues are arising, we know how and when to help them.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to tell, right? When you have these counselors, are they calling via phone? Are they having Zoom chats?
I think it's all of the above, right? And I think in terms of Zoom versus call, you actually see that even in distance learning because not all our kids have internet access. And I know it's a struggle and districts are trying to find a way to make sure kids have access, but you're seeing all of these methods of communication, even to sending letters in the mail if we're not able to contact individual students or their families.
Yeah, this is all new for all of us. Before we wrap up, what about the financial and logistical challenges?
Yeah, those are real. I think even coming into this next year, just with normal budgets, I think a lot of districts were already contemplating budget cuts. And so all these additional expenses and looking to next year with talking about physical distancing and what that would entail and the cost associated with it, I think districts are very nervous and are looking to see what the governor is going to propose next week in his budget. I think the message is we as school board members and hopefully our communities will make sure that we're advocating with our state legislators, our governor, to make sure that the resources are there for our schools.
You think smaller classrooms and fewer children?
Well, I think that, and that goes into the expense piece, right? Because if you have smaller classrooms, that means more classrooms, more teachers. I've heard other approaches thinking about a hybrid approach, staggered start times. Again, it's all up in the air. I think right now the planning is starting to happen, and hopefully families will start hearing in the next month or two what that will actually look like.
Yeah, everyone is just doing their best to try to figure it out. Xilonin Cruz-Gonzalez, president of the California School Board Association, thank you so much for answering some of the questions. I know there are so many more. I could talk to you for minutes and minutes here, but thank you so much for answering some of those questions. And as she just mentioned, the hybrid approach, my daughter's school did reach out to me as well, and they were like, how would you feel about this start time versus this start time? So I think that's what they're looking at going ahead, splitting up the days.
Yeah, it's
right?
going to be interesting. It's going to be district by district at some point. These districts are getting together right now, scrambling to figure out how they're going to handle this come late summer, early fall. And I think it's going to be broken down by what are the district's needs, how are the students adapting. I think school is going to look a lot different for our kids.
I know.
Staggering start times, taking away recess. I mean, there's going to be fallout with all of that. But right now, they're trying to figure out all those details.
Right.
And without getting a hard start date from the governor, it being a district by district thing, it's tough for the planning process to move forward at this point. So a lot of wait and see.
Yeah, it's all new, like we just talked about.